Coming up on today's episode of Parasport Nation, the 2025 Ontario Parasport Games are taking place at the end of this month. AMI's Ramya Amuthan is going to be there for five-a-side soccer. She stops by to talk about the competition and what to expect from the Ontario Parasport Games. Let's get started.
Welcome to Parasport Nation with Alex Smyth and Nathan Clement.
Welcome into Parasport Nation. I'm your host, Alex Smyth, as always joined by co-host Nathan Clement. Nathan, it's great to start another week with you. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Alex. I cannot wait to talk about the beautiful game today. So I'm really excited for everyone to hear and listen to our interview we have today with Ramya.
Yeah, I know Ramya very well. I'm excited always to talk with her. Usually it's off air or on her show. Rarely do I get to have her come on to my show or the ones I'm involved with. So I'm excited to talk all things five-a-side with her because I love soccer, but five-a-side is always a sport that I could always learn more about. I know some things about it, but there's so much more to get into. So without further ado, let's get into it because the Ontario Parasport Games are taking place between May 30th and June 31st. And there are going to be at least 11 sports competing in the competition. Things from five-a-side soccer, boccia, goalball, para-athletics, wheelchair basketball, so much more. And so Ramya Amuthan is joining the show to talk about the five-a-side soccer program and her involvement with the team. Let's welcome her in. Ramya Amuthan, thank you so much for joining the show.
I'm really excited to talk sports with you.
I know, and we're excited to talk to you because you have such a unique perspective, especially when it comes to five-a-side soccer or five-a-side football, if you want to be official on the title. But I'm curious, how long have you been playing the sport, and how did you first get involved in it?
Yeah, well, first getting involved with five-a-side, or blind soccer as we casually call it around here, is because we had Matt Greenwood, who is kind of like the head of blind soccer all over the place in Canada. He's the director of the Pickering Football Club. We had him on one of the shows here at AMI. I learned about it through that show when we chased him down, and I thought, I want to try this because it was a nice, good time. A few years ago, I'd say 4 years ago, summertime, and I went out to a couple practices just to kind of check it out because I didn't grow up playing sports, and I talk about this all the time. You would have heard me if you're a regular listener. I didn't grow up playing sports. I didn't grow up liking sports, and just felt like completely dismissed or unincluded in these things. So when I went out to blind soccer for a couple practices, really, really enjoyed it. I thought, okay, this is actually accessible. This is something that I could get on board with. And you put on an eye shade and you're pretty much on the same level playing field as everybody else. And I enjoyed it. So like 4-ish years later, I'm still playing.
For those unfamiliar with blind soccer or five-a-side soccer, how do the rules break down and kind of how does the game work?
Okay, cool. So five-a-side soccer is the closest able-bodied sport you can compare it to is futsal, FIFA futsal. So it is 5 people per side. It is obviously adopted for blind and low vision people to play. So 5 players per side, one of them being the goalkeeper, and 4 outfielders. Everyone wears eye shades except the goalkeeper. The goalkeeper can be sighted or partially sighted if you're playing internationally and competitively. And the 4 outfielders are all wearing eye shades. Everyone uses voy, which is a word that we use in blind soccer a lot. You just hear all the players say voy, voy, voy all the time. That's how we keep tabs audibly to who's on the field and where everybody else is. As well, the ball has a rattle in it. So it's not necessarily a jingle like a goal ball, but it has a rattle in it similar to a maraca. We have coaches on the side as well and goal guides on the side, so sighted people who are outside the pitch who are talking to the players depending on your zone where you're at in the game. They'll be talking to particular players, and then there are boards up on the side, the length of the pitch, to make sure that players aren't going to run out of field space.
Now, there's a number of competitions that feature five-a-side, and including the one coming up with the Ontario Parasport Game. Can you give us a bit of a preview of what to expect from that competition and your involvement on the five-a-side soccer team?
For sure. So the Parasport Games in Ontario, it's an Ontario-specific competition. It's a lot of fun, and they do it every other year. So the 2025 Ontario Parasport Games is happening at the end of May. It's the last weekend of May in the Niagara region this year. They kind of spread it out. The last few we've had around Durham region and Mississauga, so Peel region around the Greater Toronto area, but we've moved all the way to Niagara, so it's going to be a fun one. It's organized this time by Sport Niagara, and they're partnering with a whole bunch of other para sport organizations, including OBSA, Ontario Blind Sports Association, CP Sports, etc., etc. This is the 44th edition of the games, Alex and Nathan, so they've been going on for a while, and this year they expect over 400 athletes, over 700 people participating in general, because it's not just the athletes. Obviously there are coaches and other volunteers and so many people. We need to take these kind of things up to the level they need for organization. Competitions are being held at Brock University and Canada Games Park primarily, but there are other venues being used as well, because there's a wide range of para sports being played at the Ontario Parasport Games. 12 sports. We know the ones that are confirmed are five-a-side soccer, football, bocce, goalball, para-athletics, para-golf, para-ice hockey, para-karate, para-swimming, sitting volleyball, wheelchair basketball, wheelchair tennis, and a few more. I don't know how many I mentioned, but those are the ones that are confirmed, and there's going to be 12 in total. So there's a lot for people to check out as a spectator, and I really encourage that people come out because it's actually super, super fun. And this is not just to put it out there, this is not a qualifying game for international competition or the Paralympics, but it is very, very well attended. Like I said, 400 athletes. I'm going to be playing blind soccer with a few other athletes. We have two teams going out this year, and one is, we're going to keep it a bit open just because of the discrepancy of players for one team versus the other if we were to divide it up into organization. But we do have a few people going from the Pickering side, and then a whole bunch of other people kind of scattered from London, Ontario, Kitchener, Waterloo area, from West Toronto / Mississauga, Oakville area. That's going to be a lot of fun.
You mentioned it's not a qualification tournament, but for the women's national team, there is a competition heading to India in October. Can you tell us about that event?
Yeah, this is very, very exciting because Canada is going to send a team to the 2025 IBSA Women's Blind Football World Championships. I want to get that title right. So this is happening in October, like you said, and it's India's hosting the World Championships for the very first time ever, and this is going to be in Kochi, which is in Kerala, India. That's on the south, and I think that India is very excited, first of all, because it's their first time and they want to kind of put it out there that they are supporting inclusive sports, supporting para sports, supporting women in sports, all kinds of things like that. But it's also exciting for Canada because this is an international competition. And to be honest, Canada right now, on the world map of blind soccer, we're not doing well. We don't have the kind of financial support that a bunch of other countries have. We don't have the kind of history with blind soccer that other countries have. Argentina and Brazil are just killing it out there with blind soccer right now on the men and women's side. They have even in the US, the men's do decently well. I wouldn't say they're doing excellently, but they're doing well with having local programming and home growing athletes and making sure that people have the programs and facilities and financial support needed to kind of go forward with the sport. But in Canada, we're very much still at grassroots level. So we're excited to go and represent in India. It's a lot of work though, and we're kind of nervous.
I'm sure, and hearing that news and just going, oh, Canada's going to be there at that competition. You're going to be there. It's just exciting all around. But for yourself, this isn't the first time you'll be traveling with the national team. Where are some of the other kind of places you've had a chance to compete and kind of travel to as part of the national team?
Yeah, I went to one other competition, Alex, and it was a friendly. It happened in Chula Vista, which is like neighboring San Diego, California. And we went in 2023 in March, and it was technically a men's competition. Like I said, a friendly. It was a casual competition between the United States and Canada, and they were gracious enough to invite us over, host us, accommodate us, and have like a very nice weekend competition. We played 2 games against the US, and like I said, it was a men's competition, but because we didn't have enough men who were interested or available or had the means to go at that time, me and Hillary Scanlon were drafted to go along with, and it was a lot of fun. It was my absolute first time competing in blind soccer. Like, I didn't play at Parasport Games before that, anything like that. So I had no idea that soccer was going to be this. Before that, it was just, going to practice, drills, learning how to play soccer, because I didn't grow up playing soccer either, right? So there was no like defaulting to what I knew how to play. And it was just mind-blowing to me that it was a competition, that we had actual games. It's 2 20-minute halves. We were just like exhausted by the end of each game. Obviously, we didn't win, unfortunately, but we did score a goal in the second game, so that was lit.
Chula Vista is such a great spot for soccer. I've been there in the past with the 7-a-side soccer program, and just the facilities, the venues there are absolutely amazing. But since you've gotten into the sport, how have you seen it grow? And is there anything you really hope to see as 5-a-side soccer, especially, continues to grow on the women's side?
Yeah, and first of all, just to echo your sentiment about Chula Vista, the training facility over there was so wicked. It was my first time feeling like an actual pro athlete. They really treat you well. The food there is so good. And also there were legitimate pro athletes there, para athletes and able-bodied athletes training at that time. So we were just like in awe, just like hanging out with people and finding out what programs and training they were up to. But for 5-a-side soccer, Nathan, like, I'm very excited about where we're going. First of all, Canada Soccer has finally taken us under their wing, if you will, officially. So this kind of opens up a lot of doors for Canada and blind soccer at this time, obviously for international competitions, as well as just, being recognized in Canada for blind soccer, for being a para athlete in this sport is huge news. This is one of the big catalysts for us going to India in October as well. But generally speaking, like I said, we still have a lot of work in Canada. Just nationally for athletes as well, getting together, creating opportunities for athletes across the country to come together. First of all, finding athletes, right? Like, we're so Ontario centric right now, and to narrow it down even further, we're very like GTA, Greater Toronto Area centric, but there are athletes around the country. We just need to find them. We need to recruit. We need to be able to have like provincial support back and forth with different organizations. But also, like, I would say, get athletes involved from other sports to check out blind soccer, to get support that way as well. And, other things for recruitment, like getting younger people to be interested in soccer, to find out that blind soccer exists, what exactly it is. There is so much work to be done.
Well, and as you mentioned, like a big hub right now is the GTA, and I think a lot of that work and that the reward that has been seen within the growth of the sport has to do with someone like a Matt Greenwood, who's really been at the forefront, really pushing for the sport of 5-a-side football, blind soccer, however you want to call it, because we see that all the time in the parasport world. It takes a few very passionate people really pushing a movement forward and just trying to get a good, strong foundation at the grassroots that then allows the kind of foundation to grow, to get into a national level program, into international competitions like we're seeing now. For yourself, though, Ramya, I'm curious, what rule change would you or what rule would you change in five-a-side soccer if you had the chance to change any rule or any aspect when it comes to five-a-side soccer?
Okay, this is a great question. The last time we competed at Parasport Games I was in Pickering actually, so Jeffy's area. We had a bit of a spat about this, to be honest. And I think that there are like levels to kind of people acknowledging this rule. It's not necessarily a rule yet because we can't put our finger on exactly what needs to happen for the change. But because blind soccer is a bunch of blind people with eye shades on, the default and the most intuitive thing to then do to the game is to make it more audible, right? So you throw in sound, you throw in audio all over the place, and that's how we play and position ourselves. And that's the character of the game, is that it's a highly audio, similar to goalball. But there are a few of us who believe that there's too much noise or sound in five-a-side soccer. Now, there might be a discrepancy to this kind of perception depending on if you're a new athlete, if you're playing on a very recreational level, still learning to play the sport, still learning to communicate with your team members, versus the high-level athletes who are just, they've got it. They've got it figured out. They don't need to constantly call each other or know where they're passing the ball or, get into like all kinds of issues auditorily. But I think that on either end of the spectrum, there are people who believe that there is a benefit to having less noise, less sound, or less instruction. For example, right now we have the sound of the players, like we're talking verbally, right? We have sound of the players communicating with each other. We have the word voy, which is said constantly. If you don't have the ball and you're in movement, you're in motion, you need to say voy, or else it's penalty. And we have the coaches near the center, like in the center third of the on the outskirts of the field, but in the center, being able to talk to players and instruct them. We have a goalkeeper who is talking to the athletes on the defense side, the defense third. And then we have a goal guide who is like, my team's goal guide will be behind the goal of the opposite team. So when I am in the offending third, I can talk to them. They can talk to me. So there's a lot of voices and a lot of instruction going on. It can feel very overwhelming and chaotic. So there's some talk about maybe getting rid of some of those voices. Maybe no goal guide, maybe no coaching from the middle third, etc. Do you guys have any thoughts on this? I'm curious.
Nathan, I'll let you start.
I find it very interesting because obviously, like, communication is so important on the field of play, on the pitch, and having a lot of that noise. And even as you're breaking it down for us, Ramya, I'm just thinking, like, how do you orient yourself on the field and the field play when you have 4 or 5 different voices all the time happening? Because the pitch is about a little smaller than a soccer pitch. So a lot of players are in different aspects of the field. So I could imagine that noise could be very, very tricky to just be able to fully hear what you need to hear at that given time. But I'd be curious to hear what Alex thinks.
So from my perspective, having just come back from a goalball national competition where it's, as we use it as an example, and, sounded very particular how it is used during the course of the game. I'm fine with the sound of the players, the sound of, if there's a referee or in the ball and things like that. I think it should be a limit on anyone who is sighted. So if that is the coach on the sideline, I think that should be very limited what they can actually do or say. And then whether it's a goal guide as well, I would like to almost see it as the goal guide is someone else who is from the blind or partially sighted community. So they're not really giving too much away, that they're just saying, like, if you can call out to them and be like, hey, where are you? And they can just respond here, 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 or something like that. They're not giving you any more direction, just I am here. And so it's up to the player to orientate themselves. It's up to the player to know and direct themselves around. Because I think that is a way that it takes away from any sighted competitive advantage that way. What are your thoughts on that one, Ramya?
Yeah, no, you guys both bring up really interesting points, and I want to add too. It's not just the sound of the people talking, right? They're unlike in goalball where you have to be quiet during gameplay. It is officiated that way. You don't have that in blind soccer, so you have the stands. And when we were competing in San Diego, the stands were wild. Like the spectatorship was wild. I mean, when you hear people listen to soccer in general, or when you're watching soccer, the way that you would erupt when a goal's shot or whatever, or even blocked, that's the way that it was for us. And it is extremely disorienting, not to mention just sound of the environment. When you're playing indoors, it feels different from when you're playing outdoors. And also the ball being hit against the boards, or players being hit against the boards, all of that disorients you. So like I said, some of this is because if you're talking to me, an inexperienced kind of low-level player versus like one of our athletes who's used to play for Iran on the Paralympic level and now comes to hang out with us. No, I'm kidding. He plays. When you ask him, he's not really stressed out about these things, right? But I do agree with you, Alex, on this on the line of like, maybe let's limit and curate the voices that we hear, which there's already a decent percentage of that, but I think we need to do it more or eliminate some of the sighted assistants altogether. That's where I stand on it.
And one last question for you, Ramya, before we let you go. This is one thing I find very interesting is the caveat on disability for the different players, because obviously, currently there's not the Paralympic level competition for the women's side, but it's kind of like an open competition with men and women competing together. But the men have to be classified as B1, where the women have freedom to be classified B1, 2, or 3. What do you make of that? And do you find that there is actually a competitive advantage, even though all the players are wearing eye shades, that even if you are a B2 or 3 with an eye shade, you're still going to have a bit more of a competitive advantage over someone maybe who's a B1?
Yeah, I do think that there's a competitive advantage, long story short, because it's like a sighted person putting on eye shades. If you're familiar, you got to get used to the eye shades and playing the sport blind. But after that, I do believe that, there's the hand-eye coordination side of it, the understanding of your body awareness, also being able to pick up different things sightedly and then transferring that to doing with the eye shades on is it's vastly different for someone who either A, has had vision in their entire life, or B, has partial sight that they can rely on when they're not playing the game. Just your orientation of the world is very different. If you were born blind and you've had to learn how to do all of these things without sight, it's just a different learning curve and a different awareness of the world. So there is competitive advantage. I strongly believe that in any of the sports where we definitely, put on eye shades and everyone's on the same playing field, same like sight advantage in real time while the sport is being played. But the B1, B2, B3 categories of partial sight to blindness, like that spectrum, I think it does make a difference. So that's why for the women on the Paralympic level, they've included B1, 2, and 3 to be able to compete together, because the competition is just very different with blind soccer. On the Paralympic level, the high performance level, it's less competition and more room for players. But the men's side, it's highly competitive, and they'll only allow B1s to be qualified.
Say, for example, how many, because I know going to the paracycling side of things in tandem racing, there's no like visual blockers on any of the tandem paracyclists, and you do see that difference with athletes who were born blind versus who are partially sighted. Some partially sighted riders can see little bits of the road and be able to anticipate a lot more, but it comes down to like, especially with the team sports, how you break down the structure of play. And say for on the women's side and when they're joined together, the men's and women's games, how many B2s or B3s would be allowed on the pitch or allowed on the field, and how does like the class structure break down?
So I'm not sure on the logistic, like the qualifying side, because everyone still wears eye shades if you're playing B1 soccer. So you can be a B2 or a B3, but everyone's still wearing eye shades. So I don't think it makes a difference on what position you're playing on the field during the actual game. But, you know, because unlike blind hockey, for example, right? Like B1s are only allowed to be goalkeepers, goalies, compared to the outfielders. And I think not on the Paralympic level, and please don't even quote me on this, but I believe that there are different competitions internationally where B2s all play together, B3s play together, B1s play together. So it's not just like everybody from all qualifications playing soccer together, and then some people are blindfolded, some not.
Yeah, so there's still that kind of that evolution depending on the competition then. Certainly.
Which gets great, you know?
Well, and we see it in other sports and other competitions throughout the calendar year, but we will certainly be keeping our eyes on the Ontario Parasport Games. Ramya, thank you so much for chatting with us. Best of luck for you and your team at the competition. We'll definitely be following along.
Thank you. All right, take care, guys. It was nice chatting with you.
And that was our conversation with Ramya Amuthan. Nathan, tons to get into there. What a great conversation, first off. I always enjoy chatting with Ramya, but I really loved her talking and describing about, you know, how the sport has evolved through the years, how there's still that desire to really grow the program, especially with it being so focused and centralized in Ontario.
Yeah, it sounds like a sport that's really growing, and having the Ontario Parasport Games really being another launching point for more people to hopefully get involved. It's very much a uncut gem at this point. It's an undiscovered gem at this point that we hope can really continue to expand, and having a competition, having a world championships like they will in India is so excited. Was there any takeaways from that interview for you, Alex?
So for me, I find it very interesting that because this is still an open sport, at least on the Paralympic level, that the men and women compete on the same team, that you can have that variance in, the classification for the women opposed to the men, just to really try to boost participation for women. We see that in other sports like wheelchair curling, goalball, things like that, where there are those mixed sports. And so it's interesting to hear her perspective on, you know, how they're trying to get kind of more participation and having that as a variability. Quickly, Nathan, anything else that stood out for you before we wrap the show?
I think the biggest thing is really taking in all the noise that they have to experience on the field of play. I know for just watching other sports like goalball, the crowds have to be quiet, as we talked about in the conversation, but just the level of skill and ability to read and just trust yourself, but also trust the players that these players have to go through with all that noise, and especially the atmospheres that the beautiful game creates, and especially the viewing experiences for the crowds and how they like to get involved in that balance that the athletes really have to take in there and zero in, focus in on what's happening on the pitch.
From the goals to the end buzzers, this show is over. That is Nathan Clement. I'm Alex Smyth. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Parasport Nation. Like and subscribe to the channel to follow us now.